meeting of the North Fair Oaks Community Council to order. Let's start with a roll call, please.
Commencing roll call now. Councilmember Juan Carlos Prado.
Present.
Councilmember Beatriz Cerrillo.
Present.
Councilmember Everardo Rodriguez. Councilmember Jennifer Ruiz. Vice Chair Blair Whitney.
Here.
Councilmember Nick Searcy. Councilmember Kathleen Daly.
Here.
Sure. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 2, AB 361, resolutions for conduct of meetings via teleconference. September 16, 2021, the governor signed AB 361, a bill that formalizes and modifies the teleconference procedures implemented by California public agencies in response to the governor's executive orders addressing Brown Act compliance during shelter-in-place periods. AB 361 allows local governments to continue to conduct virtual meetings as long as there is a gubernatorially proclaimed public emergency in combination with adopted findings that meeting in person would present risks to health. Thus, a resolution is required to invoke the provisions of AB 361 as it is found that conducting in-person meetings would present an imminent risk to the health and safety of attendees. Do we have any questions from council members on this? Is there any public comment?
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 2, AB 361 resolution, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or use the raise hand feature on Zoom.
Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to invoke provisions of AB 361 to conduct this evening's meeting.
I make the motion.
Second, we need a roll call, please.
Councilmember Juan Carlos Prado.
Aye.
Councilmember Beatriz Cerrillo.
Aye.
Councilmember Everardo Rodriguez absent. Councilmember Jennifer Ruiz absent. Councilmember Nick Searcy absent. Councilmember Kathleen Daly.
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair Whitney.
Aye.
Chair Brooks Esser.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Item number 3, public comment. Anyone may speak up to 2 minutes on any topic not on the agenda. Those in attendance, please fill out a speaker slip and note that the council may not discuss or take action on items not on the agenda. Why don't we begin with speakers in the room and then proceed to those attending online tonight.
A brief announcement. We do have an interpretation line that our Spanish interpreter will assist us with. The phone number is 1-877-568-4106, and the code to enter is 877-394-869#. Victor, would you like to provide this instruction in Spanish, please?
Thanks, Tiana. Through the chair. Good evening, all. Buenas noches. Les queremos dejar saber que esta reunión del concilio de North Fair Oaks será totalmente interpretada al español. Para participar en esta reunión y escucharla todo en español, llame al 1-877-568-4106 y pulse el código 877-394-869 y después el símbolo de número. Le voy a repetir el número una vez más, 1-877-568-4106 y enseguida pulse el código 877-394-869 y el símbolo de número. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you. It is now time for general public comment. Members of the public may comment on any topic that is not on the agenda. For those attending the meeting on the Zoom video conference, we will use the raise hand feature. When you hear your name called, we'll send you a request to mute your mic and you may begin speaking. For those attending the meeting in the conference room 101, please bring your speaker slip up to the clerk during this time. I do see a hand raised. We'll get the timer up on the screen. Kent, we'll grant you the access to speak and you will have 2 minutes. You may begin.
Greetings, council members. I'd like to provide you an update on the Healthy Community Mural Project. On September 30th, we completed a community survey to identify healthy community topics. The survey results will be shared and discussed at our upcoming community meeting on November 29th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. The meeting will be hybrid, in person at the Human Services Agency building and online via Zoom. English and Spanish translation will be provided. The Healthy Community Mural Committee has selected 3 artists to receive proposal awards based on applications received. The artists will be at the November 29th community meeting to engage with the community about the healthy community topics identified via the survey. The artists will return again on February 7th, 2023 for community meeting number 2. At this meeting, each of the artists will present their mural presentations, their proposals, and the community will provide feedback. 1 artist will be selected to complete the project. Mural painting is expected to begin in May of 2023. And we hope to see you all and as many people from North Fair Oaks as possible to come to community number 1 on Tuesday, November 29th. For more information, anybody can go online, ccnfo.org/mural, ccnfo.org/mural. Thank you very much. And to Diana, I will be raising my hand for a different public comment. Thank you.
Thank you, Kent. Last call for public comment on Zoom. Okay, Kent will grant you the access to speak.
Hello again, Council and the watching public. Now I'd like to give you an update on the Center for Creativity. In October 2021, Cindy Stokes from the Center for Creativity Steering Committee shared with you all at a North Fair Oaks Community Council meeting our vision for a major arts center in the Redwood City area. That same month, over 2,300 people responded to our community survey that demonstrated a clear need for a local arts center. We have recently hired AMS Planning and Research to conduct a major feasibility study to inform us of models for the center, including activity, location, size, and operations. We thank Supervisor Slocum and the Board of Supervisors for supporting the feasibility study. The study will take about 7 months. The center does fulfill the San Mateo County Strategic Plan for the Arts Commission, specifically addressing goal summary number 5. Support the potential development of public performance and art venues and artist work-live spaces to meet the needs of the community in San Mateo County. So right now, AMS is currently interviewing city, county, and civic leaders. At the same time, AMS is also seeking input from local artists, arts organizations, small businesses, and any other individuals or organizations whose space and resource needs may be met by a permanent arts center in the Redwood City area. For more information and to receive updates, visit rwccfc.org. Once again, rwccfc.org. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you, Kent. Do we have additional comment, Diana?
There seems to be no more public comment. I will now turn it over to our interpreter to see if there are any public comments on the Spanish line. Victor?
Thanks, Diana. There's none at the moment.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 4, service recognition honoring council member Beatrice Cerrillo for her work and dedication to the North Fair Oaks community. I was disappointed last week to receive the news that Beatrice Cerrillo, longtime member of the North Fair Oaks Community Council, will have served on the council for the maximum number of years as of December 31st and is no longer eligible to serve on the North Fair Oaks Community Council. Wanted to offer both the public and council members the opportunity to acknowledge your contributions to our community for the record. Beatrice has served on the council since 2009, continuously working to improve the quality of life for our residents. I personally have appreciated her experience and perspective during council discussions. She brought a historical perspective to our discussions that I've always valued. I'd like to offer my personal thanks to her as a mentor and a friend. Her advice and counsel have been invaluable to me, both as a council member as well as chair. At this time, I'd like to offer members of the public an opportunity to share their thoughts on Beatrice's contributions. If we have public input for Beatrice, that would be the time to offer.
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 4, service recognition honoring Councilmember Beatriz Cerrillo, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or raise your hand on Zoom. Victor, are there any, oh, I do see a hand raised. Kent, you may begin when you are ready.
Beatrice, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you for your service to our community. You have been a role model to so many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Do any of the other council members have any thoughts that they'd like to share with Beatrice? Vice Chair Whitney, please go ahead, Blair.
Hey, Beatrice. It's been an honor and a privilege to serve with you. I've lived in North Fair Oaks since like 2012, and I got on the council. It's a blur, like 2017 or 18. And over the course of, fairs and festivals and cleanup days, you made me feel welcome and included. Like you can be on my cleanup team, or we worked the table together at the North Fair Oaks Festival. And you were really thinking on the fly. We were talking about different things that were issues, and Canopy, the urban forest, got people excited. So you started like a sign up list to get more information. You just quietly adapting and speaking out to the community and creating that linkage helped me. And I learned from you how to, participate in my community more. So with gratitude, I wish you well.
Thank you, Blair. Do we have other comments from council members?
Oh, I had raised my hand up here.
Oh, I'm sorry.
We're here last.
multitasking.
We're doing it both ways here.
Please go ahead, Carlos.
Beatrice, what can I say? We're neighbors. We live on the same street. So you were definitely one of my inspirations for me being on this council. So thank you so much for everything that you've done. And we hope to continue to build on the legacy that you've established, and you've always led by example. So we hope that we can continue doing that work.
Any other comments for Beatrice? Okay, well, thank you so much, Beatrice, for your service to our community. Agenda item number 5, a letter of support for unincorporated San Mateo County Local Road Safety Plan. The presentation is going to be given by Harry Yip of Road Construction and Operations. Harry, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Esler. So I came to you guys about a couple months ago to talk about our efforts in developing a local rail safety plan for the unincorporated communities of San Mateo County. And just to introduce myself, my name is Harry Yip, and I'm the Associate Civil Engineer for the Roads Department. So I've been working on this local road safety plan. And what is a local road safety plan? It's just a way of us to use safety data and identify roads in our communities that require some maybe extra attention to improve safety. Its main goals is to really address traffic related fatalities and severe injury collisions. So we want to have 0 traffic-related fatalities by 2035 and reduce severe injury collisions by 50% by that same period as well as improving safety for all roadway users. We had developed this plan with a whole bunch of different stakeholders here, CHP, Caltrans, sustainability department, planning building, our BPAC, members of our board supervisors, and the public health department too. So I'm going to go through this real quick because we already went through it before. But if you guys have any questions later, we can answer it then. So basically, we just took the data collected through law enforcement collision data from 2014 and 2020, and that was our our formal source of data for this analysis. Of course, there's not 100% data source that would capture every single thing, and these are some of the limitations. There's always some things that may get unreported. So what do we do with the data? We picked some the intersections and road segments that we thought were the most needing attention. So intersections with the top 15 most injury collisions, also the road segments with the most collisions, giving extra weight to severe injury and fatal collisions, and more to active mode, which are bicyclist and pedestrian collisions. So this is kind of the picture we get after we do the data analysis for North Fair Oaks. We found that our significant corridors are El Camino Real, Middlefield Road, Fifth Avenue, Bay Road. So those all made the list here of what we wanted to focus on. And same for our intersections. This is a list of intersections. So we see that Middlefield, 6th and 2nd have a lot of the attention. And then Middlefield and 5th as well, because this is separated because it's a signalized intersection. Sorry. So we already, we're in the implementation phase for some of this. Middlefield Road is already seeing some improvements with the current project, and we're also going to be implementing projects from this plan as funding becomes available. And then some countermeasures may be implemented as part of maintenance projects as well. And then, so what are our next steps and future updates? So we're actually going to the board for adoption later next month. And we've already received support from our BPAC and the Mid-Coast Community Council. So hopefully we'll get the plan adopted by 2023, and then that will make us applying for grants much more competitive, since we will have this plan as it's a requirement for future grant opportunities. And the plan will be reevaluated at minimum every 5 years with new data and with an evaluation of the stuff that's been implemented as well. So that's all I have for today. So I was hoping we could get a letter of support also from the North Fair Oaks Community Council. But before that, I think I can take any questions that the group or public has.
We have an opportunity for public comment on this issue. Do we have any public comment either in the room or online? Yeah.
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 5, letter of support for unincorporated San Mateo County Local Road Safety Plan, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or raise your hand on Zoom. Do not see any hands raised. Victor, oh, okay. We do have one from Kenny. Harry, could you stop sharing your screen so we could prompt up the timer, please? Thank you. Kenny will grant you the access to speak, and you will have 2 minutes. You may begin.
Okay, hi, can you hear me? Sorry, this is my first time speaking on council, so thank you for this opportunity. So yeah, I guess I'm trying to get some more information in regards to the plans. I know I heard something about the corridor between Middlefield, 5th and 2nd. I live here on 2nd Avenue in North Fair Oaks. I've been here, pretty much all my life, past 40 years. And I know just given the past increase in volume and, business and residents, this corridor here on 2nd Avenue is also a really extremely highly traveled street. It's wide, cars go really fast. I also submitted a request for, speed bumps, for lack of better words, to be, a study to be, to be, taken a look at, and I'm not sure where that's gone, but wherever we're going with, the phase of traffic, I think, some of these big long strips that run, between, like for instance, Middlefield all the way to Broadway, which are traveled for work or, just daily travel, seem to be kind of a place where people tend to go really fast. So I guess my question is, aside from, I know the data is basically what we're basing off of, but is there ways that we can also, take a look at some of these main thoroughfare streets that aren't as popular as, let's say, 5th from El Camino to Broadway, or, 5th from Middlefield to El Camino? So just a thought.
Thank you very much, Kenny. Do we have additional public comment?
Victor, are there any public comment on the Spanish line?
Thank you. No, there's none at the moment.
Are there questions from council members on this issue? Please, Beatrice, go ahead.
I was going to also bring up the situation of 2nd Avenue. I constantly hear, like the gentleman was stating, that there is traffic that goes awfully fast. 20, 25, oh no, we're talking 30, 35, 40, because it's from, as soon as they come to, because it's long, it is long, and they start with Middlefield railroad track, and then from the railroad track, boom, all the way to the stop sign on Fair Oaks and 2nd, and boom, they keep going, and those speeds are fast. And so we, as the neighbors that live on that avenue, are constantly whistling, yelling at this traffic, slow down, you can hear them. And so I have a big concern about, and it is the thoroughway, 5th Avenue, then we have the 2nd Avenue, and all the way to Douglas. So it's that long thoroughway. So it doesn't come in, it doesn't fall into one of those data points that the study is. It has to go much more deeper. These people live on that street, and the common thread is, do we need to have an accident to happen before something else takes place? We have talked about speed bumps since forever, that it's always, shut down because other factors seem to just not make it happen. But again, the people that live on the street are constantly talking about, does something fatal have to happen before we take action? That's my concern.
Thank you, Beatrice. Is that something we could look at, Harry, or at least include in the presentation that goes to the board, that perhaps 2nd Avenue warrants research, if not prior to going to the board, at least quickly after that?
Yeah, I think this is something you could probably add as a concern of the council in your letter to recommend to DPW to take further look at.
Okay, that would be. I will do that. Are there any other comments from council members? Vice Chair Whitney, please go ahead.
I just want to comment. We did a community bike ride from St. Francis Center over to Flood Park, and a resident who lives on 5th near Park he had his kids with him, and he showed me pictures of a car that crashed into the front of a house. People do drive late at night at excessive speeds. And I really urged him to like come to the council and talk, because he did a petition with his neighbors to get a stop sign or do something. And he never followed up, and both the Silicon Valley Bike Coalition and me are like, anyone get his phone number? No. But there is an issue in the neighborhood about excessive speeds, especially late at night when like the clubs are getting out and people are just getting wherever they want to go. I've even heard cars peeling out, like the little sideshow action. And it's like late at night, 10:30, 11, and I'm like trying to sleep to get up for work. And I haven't been motivated enough to like throw clothes on, run down the street and see exactly where it is and try to get a camera photo. But there are some knuckleheads in those little residential side streets doing donuts. So it's an issue to just be aware of, and if we could ask everyone to report it when they see it, call the sheriff's non-emergency number. That's all I got.
Kathleen, did you have?
Oh, I wanted to follow up on what Beatrice said, because I actually was curious where this Edison Way, and so I turned on Second for the first time the other day. And I was like, wow, this street's really wide. It just seems like, I didn't even know it was actually as wide, and so I can only imagine it's a huge speed, and probably because it's gonna butt into this Edison Way, it probably does make it something to include in that letter and take a better look at.
Do we have any other questions from council members?
Yeah, I would just like to,
Please, Juan
just
Carlos.
to piggyback and further support, since I live 2 blocks away from there, and the neighbors have voiced their opinion strongly. And I don't know what it's gonna look like after the Middlefield Road construction is done with the bike lanes. But I would like to add language to like you suggested.
Referring to Second Avenue.
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah.
very well. So with that, I'll entertain a motion, actually, instructing me to write a letter to the Board of Supervisors, noting that we support the San Mateo County Local Road Safety Plan with an additional request to ask DPW to take a look at Second Avenue, the traffic and speed concerns there, perhaps recommend solutions for those issues to the board. Do we have a motion to that effect?
I make the motion.
I'll second it.
We need a roll call, please.
Commencing roll call now. Councilmember Juan Carlos Prado,
Aye.
Councilmember Beatriz Aliga,
Aye.
Councilmember Kathleen Daly,
Aye.
Vice Chair Blair Whitney,
Aye.
Chair Brooks Esser,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much. Agenda item number 6, North Fair Oaks Community Council recommendation to the Board of Supervisors for the consideration of a use permit, zoning and general plan amendment, merger and associated environmental review for a new 48,715 square foot hotel with 69 guest rooms and 51 parking spaces. Parcel 054-261-210 is proposed to be rezoned from R3S5 to CMU1. Presentation is going to be given by Kanawa Kelly of Planning and Building. Don't know if Kanawa is in the room or is he online this evening.
Hi, I'm here. Let me just share my presentation with you. One sec. Okay. All right. Good evening, everyone, and council members. As you mentioned, the project before you is consideration of a use permit to allow the construction of there was a typo on the agenda. It is an 18,715 square foot hotel with 69 guest rooms and 48 parking spaces. Look at it at 2567 North El Camino Real in North Fair Oaks. The project also includes the rezoning and general plan amendment of one parcel that's part of the project. and a grading permit for the 251 cubic yards of grading. So as we mentioned, it's located at 2567 El Camino Real, North Fir Oaks, at the corner of El Camino Real and Northumberland Avenue. And the project will actually span 3 parcels. So you have 2561, 2567 El Camino at the front there, and then 11 Northumberland in the rear. So the 2561, 2567 are currently occupied by 2 commercial buildings. One's being used utilized as a restaurant and beauty services. And then 11 Northumberland is currently a parking lot, so it is not developed. Here's a view of the corner there. And then here's a rendering of the hotel. So you can, again, it's 18,715 square feet, 69 guest rooms, 48 parking spaces. And there's another view of the hotel. Here is the site plan with the pedestrian entry. And the hotel, which will occupy, be pushed kind of to the corner of the parcel there and pushed to the front. Here is the overall site plan for the first floor. So you can see that there's open space, there's a pedestrian entry, there's a 12-foot sidewalk in front. There's the hotel lobby and front desk right at the front of the street. And then all the parking is kind of tucked underneath the footprint of the building. So the first floor is dedicated to parking spaces. You can see the multiple parking spaces, the valet parking that's underneath the second floor. And these will utilize a lift so that they can get more vehicles into those spaces. And then the other floors will just be guest rooms. So in order to develop the parcel, the applicant is requesting a rezone and general plan amendment for one parcel, this 11 Northumberland here. The parcels at 2561, 2567 El Camino are zoned CMU1, which allows hotels with a use permit. This parcel back here is zoned R3S5, which is a high density residential. And it actually, the R3 zone allows hotels with a use permit, but in order to comply with setbacks and other requirements and to be consistent, we don't want to have split zoning on one single parcel. The applicant is requesting a rezone and general plan amendment. The rezone is from R3S5 to the commercial mixed use 1, and a general plan amendment from high density residential to commercial mixed use. And here's the North Fir Oaks community plan. You can see in the red box there is our parcels. We have 2 parcels here, and then this parcel right behind it. The rezone general plan amendment will continue the commercial use here at El Camino as part of the plan. The R3, the high density residential, the multifamily housing is in the general plan, North Fir Oaks community plan, and the zoning maps. They're really acting as a buffer between higher density uses, commercial uses, and residential. So you can see there is plenty of R3, so high density residential here. There's not going to be any impact to or introduction of incompatible uses with the rezoning of that one parcel there. And just some general information again, as part of the permit, a grading permit is required for the grading quantities. So as the project complies with all of the CMU1 development standards, so that's what it would be rezoned to. Once it is rezoned and the general plan amendment is approved by the board, the parcels would be merged, so it'd be one parcel. And the project, as designed, complies with the CMU1 development standards. There's also design guidelines, which I went over in the staff report for commercial structures on El Camino that the project complies with. Parking standards, the minimum parking spaces the project complies with as well, which is 48, which is actually more than what the North Fair Oaks Community Plan requires. And the general performance standards, the project complies with all of those. So as I mentioned, the project's consistent with the general plan and North Fair Oaks plan. It's not in conflict with any of the land use maps. The rezoning will not create, pocket zoning or introduce incompatible land uses. And as detailed in the staff report, all findings for the rezoning and general plan amendments can be made. Also included in the staff report was a traffic analysis, which looked at VMT, which the project is exempt from additional analysis under CEQA. It's within a transit corridor. It's not removing any housing or any affordable housing. So it qualifies for an exemption from that. They also included a trip generation count, and it's estimated that the project would generate approximately 277 daily trips, which is less than our threshold that would require a traffic analysis. So the project is not anticipated to have significant traffic impacts. For the environmental review, the project was analyzed in the context of impacts and mitigation measures that were discussed in the program EIR for North Fair Oaks Community Plan. It's determined that it was consistent with that analysis. There are no new environmental effects that would occur, and no new mitigation measures are required. Therefore, no additional CEQA analysis is required. But the project is required to follow all of the mitigation measures from the program EIR. So recommendation. The recommendation here is that the North Fair Oaks Community Council, you would be providing a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors on the use permit for the hotel and the general plan amendment, the rezoning, and the grading permit. So that concludes my presentation. I'll be here to answer any questions on policy considerations. And we also have the applicant and his team here to answer any details about the project.
Okay, thank you very much, Kanawa. Do we have any questions from council members with regard to the project?
Through the chair, I believe we proceed with public comment.
Let's see. So I've got council members as next on my agenda.
Yeah.
So, okay,
Switch the order in the agenda.
no problem. Okay. Questions from council members with regard to the proposal?
I have a question.
Juan Carlos, please go
In
ahead.
regard to the parking spaces, is there any special accommodations being planned for that, or the parking space within the limits given the square foot and given the number of rooms are being proposed?
Yeah, they comply with our requirements for parking based on the square footage of the guest rooms. So there's no variances or exceptions that are being asked for in this case. They will be able to comply. They had to get a little creative. Like I said, they will be using stacking machines. So they'll have 2 cars per space, and that allows them to meet that parking requirement.
Please.
Follow-up question. You mentioned somewhat, some of the description, the lobby, other features. Is there
Yeah.
gonna be like a full bar being proposed here as far as their amenities?
Nazi, did you want to answer that? I didn't see it on the plan set. I think there's just a lounge and a front desk area, but
No full bar.
no
Just
full
wine
bar.
and beer? Wine and beer. Okay, I'm just concerned because it's a neighborhood there, there's a lot of family and kids, so I just wanted to get that cleared up. Okay. No full bar.
Other questions from council members?
I'm still not
Go ahead,
exactly
Beatrice.
where it's going to be. So can I see the picture of the
The-
proposal? I don't have the Capelli's.
The Target Shopping Center and the Verizon store, a locksmith shop, then this.
So-
side, and
So
then
right here,
Hertz across the street.
So are those buildings, they have businesses right now, correct?
Yes.
yes.
Will they be relocating the businesses that are there now?
Question two, where are they gonna go? They just disappear. I mean, that's.
Yeah, Nazi, if you want to answer that, I believe that they're just tenants. They're leasing these properties.
Correct, and the beauty salon has sat empty for as long as we've owned it as well. So there's a small restaurant right now, but there are tenants, so
Are you making any considerations for their restaurant that's there?
we would be happy to, I think, we don't know if we can get the go-ahead to develop yet, but we would be happy to,
So you own the Capelli building?
yes,
You own that building? But not the restaurant?
both,
Oh, you do? Okay.
And the parking lot behind it.
in the parking lot that serves those 2 businesses. Currently.
Sir, I live in the neighborhood and it looks like those might be apartments above the beauty store. Sometimes I'm walking around, there's like lights on and stuff. Are they not residential at all?
There are unlicensed or
Unpermitted?
unpermitted places that we took over, but they're
Okay.
not
There's a lot.
permitted.
So without benefit of a permit, there was some rental units.
How many people will be displaced in the, do you have any idea how many people are living there and work in the restaurant?
Working in the restaurant. They live in the area, I think it's one family primarily that's working in the restaurant. And then living there, 2 or 3 families.
It's a really loud restaurant with loud bands on Fridays and Saturday nights.
Is there anything to be done to make any considerations for the people that are there?
We'd
written
be
into
happy
this
to
plan?
help them relocate and help them, pay them to do that.
Okay. That's what I would like to see, actually, some consideration for everyone that's there, regardless if it's permitted or not.
Other questions from council members? Go ahead, Vice Chair Witt.
This reminds me of, there's a hotel they built in Menlo Park, like a boutique one. And they're really like crazy everywhere. Is there really that much demand? I mean, they're creating huge office space complexes while people aren't even going back to work. And then there's hotels. It's like they're really hoping that it all comes back, or I mean, it's a risk. It's on you, not us, so.
Yeah, that's top of mind for us, obviously. So during COVID, there was not a lot of demand. Prior to COVID, there was more than enough demand. So our analysis that people haven't moved out of the area in Great Memphis, even if they're working remotely part of the week. So they will still be meeting with their partners, their vendors, their clients in the area. And in fact, some people who've moved out of the area need to come back for quarterly meetings or whatever it might be with their teams. That'll generate hotel usage as well.
One more comment. The housing element review is really focused on getting density along Middlefield and El Camino. The hotel's not going to address our particular residential need, but those adjacent parcels could, and you might activate the block. I mean, I'm not sure if people want to be next to a Target and a Verizon store or a hotel, but it's probably, I don't know, it's a gamble, but the 4-story thing is what we're looking at up and down Middlefield and El Camino. This is what we're trying to activate. Hopefully, we're going to get residential apartments and a mix that has affordability for the current residents, but. All right.
Other questions from council members? I'm going to go ahead and direct, I see we've got Will Gibson on the line tonight, and Will's part of a team that is assessing rezoning portions of both El Camino and as well as Middlefield from R3S5 to CMU1. And if I'm not mistaken, Will, one of the lots that this project would go on is actually one of the lots that's targeted to be zoned, to be rezoned. Is that correct? Is that your understanding?
I believe it ends just short of these parcels. I would have to check. I didn't look as closely as I might have. It may include the rear parcel, but I don't think.
Yeah, I'm looking at my map and it appears it takes the first parcel that we're talking about rezoning, but not the second one on there. I just wanted to make sure I was looking at the right.
I think you're actually correct
Right,
now that I look at it. Yeah.
So in a sense, this is the kind of development that we're looking at along El Camino, kind of this through the block CMU1 usage.
Yeah, this is entirely consistent. The rezoning and the change in the general plan land use is entirely consistent with what we are proposing with the North Fair Oaks rezoning project.
And I only had one other question with regard to parking spaces. Do those parking spaces include the ones set aside for check-in, taxis, ride services, things like that? Is that all part of that 51 number?
It includes everything. And I
Okay.
think what it doesn't include is potentially being able to park or stop in the aisles if there is. I think we'll see a surge,
Mhm.
but because it's 100% valet parking, so
Oh, okay.
there
Okay.
will be no guests parking themselves.
I've seen that at Park James where they back up in the street when they got a lot of people arriving, take a lane out of El Camino.
Have you seen, because I've seen the Park James too. I live pretty close to that and it's pretty unusual to have a problem there. I presume you're familiar with the Park James and I can't tell by the drawings, but do you have that sort of space out front? Now, the Park James is bigger than this project, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
I think they are square footage wise.
I was thinking in terms of number of rooms.
The number of rooms, I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, but they've got room for 6 or 8 cars at one time out in
Super
front.
small
which is-
driveway when you drop.
Oh, yeah, it's,
And I think all of our, I guess, Uber traffic, which we expect the majority of guests to use,
Mhm.
would enter on Northumberland rather than take up El Camino.
Mhm.
Our entrance, the vehicles is only on Northumberland.
Oh, it is, okay.
So now I have another question. Northumberland is residential. Have there been conversations with the neighbors that live on Northumberland?
We held a community hearing for the neighborhood, I think.
Yeah, as part of the pre-application process, there's a community meeting that's required, and we did notice the project and get feedback from the neighbors. As I recall, there wasn't there was a few neighbors that were for the project, but yeah, there wasn't much opposition.
Kathleen.
So guests would be coming in off of El Camino and let's say an Uber car, how are it's going to only come in one way, or they're going to have to U-turn around to get to the front of if the entrance is on Umberland, but El Camino is the main thoroughfare for people coming in and out.
So they can, from El Camino, they can turn into Northumberland.
Okay.
And then turn into our driveway.
So they'd make a left turn into the driveway. Okay,
I guess if they're coming from the north.
from the north, yeah, okay.
Are there any other questions from council members? Do we have any public comment on this item, Deanna?
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 6, consideration of a use permit, zoning and general plan amendment located at 2567 El Camino Real, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or raise your hand on Zoom. I do see one hand on. Libby, we will grant you the access to speak and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I drive past that parcel all the time. And let me be frank, the hotel looks very good, very attractive. And I like the way it's been designed. It seems like it was deliberately designed to have a very good relationship with the community, both the people that live there and the small business around there. It's the opposite of antagonism, if you ask me. So I'm very attracted. I'm very excited about this. It's certainly a very attractive hotel, and I think it really adds value to the location. I'm happy to see it happen. So thank you very much.
Last call for public comment on Zoom. We do have a public comment in conference room 101. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello, I am a resident of North Oaks, and my name's Edavita, and I am personally not convinced about this bill simply because where it is currently located, there are other alternative hotels, and I'm not really certain as to how this will benefit the local and immediate community. I know that the most common recent comments about housing is really more affordability, and so I'm not certain how a hotel of sorts will assistance instead of having to assist those that are coming from out of town or from neighboring cities as such. As Mr. Chen has mentioned regarding working from home opportunities and using a potential conference room of sorts. So I am not in agreement because I'm just wondering how this will benefit the immediate residents, especially the residents from Northumberland. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the chair, we do have one more public comment on Zoom. And our Guevarera will grant you the access to speak when you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you for offering me the opportunity. Just looking at the project, just for consideration for the council. Has there been a review of the proprietor, previous businesses or their dealings with hotel-like settings, where one can look at and consider and see if there was a favorable rating for previous hotels, just to see where that stands and how that will fit with the community. Secondly, and just looking at this, would there be considerations for a community benefits agreement to have further discussions with the community and see how that will favor the community? We talked about displacement of families, businesses, and things of that nature. So sort of just proposing it out there before a decision is made to perhaps have discussions about a community benefits agreement so that folks can begin to negotiate and look for the best interest of the community as well. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment?
Victor, do we have any public comment on the Spanish line?
Thank you. No, there's none.
Through the chair, please note that we did receive a written public comment for this agenda item. We do have a public comment from Janet Davis. NFO and other areas of the county are in desperate need of low-income housing. An absolutely perfect place for such a development would be on ECR near Target at this very site. I believe that at present there are 2 or 3 apartments at the site above retail establishment. The proposal is to rezone this needed residential space to accommodate a huge hotel. Not only does this go contrary to what is needed, but it is a totally unreasonable place to put a hotel. Almost right opposite to the site is a hotel that was not financially profitable, which was converted for a place to house homeless people. This site is near Woodside Road, at the east side of which are frequent homeless encampments. On the other side of ECR, at the intersection of Woodside, there have been several fires caused by homeless people. And in addition, anyone who checks the crime graphic site will spot all the drug crime reports for that area of ECR. It is highly doubtful that any hotel at this location will be financially viable, and it is a perfect spot for the very much needed low-income housing. No more public comment. Back to you, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much. There is no other comment from council members. I'm going to go ahead then and call for a motion recommending to the Board of Supervisors that they approve the use permit, zoning, and general plan amendment merger and associated environmental review for the hotel that we've had described to us this evening. Would someone like to make a motion in that regard?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Second. We need a roll call then.
Councilmember Juan Carlos Prado.
Aye.
Councilmember Beatriz Rio.
Nay.
Councilmember Kathleen Jolly.
Nay.
Vice Chair Blair Whitney.
Yeah.
Chair Brooks Esser.
Yes.
How many votes are needed for this to pass?
It's a majority of the present and voting members, so I believe the motion carries.
Thank you. Your Chair.
All right, thank you very much. Next agenda item is a grading permit for a 7-story, 169-unit apartment building with basement parking, including earthwork at 2949 Edison Way. The presentation is going to be given by Angela Chavez of Planning and Building.
Good evening, North Fair Oaks Community Council members and staff. Again, my name is Angela Chavez, and I am a senior planner here with the county's Planning and Building Department. Sorry, a little delay on my screen here. There we go. So as mentioned, the proposed project includes a new 7-story residential apartment building. The building includes 169 units, 218 parking spaces, a 3rd floor courtyard, an outdoor space, and a roof deck on the roof of the building. And this is on a 57,798 square foot parcel. The associated earthwork for this project is 22,798 cubic yards of cut. And that is needed to construct the subgrade parking level and foundation for the building. In addition to the grading permit, the project also requires a site development permit, which is being processed under county file number PLN 2021-0090. This is being processed as a separate ministerial or staff level permit by the county's planning department. The project is before you today because of the grading permit. The grading permit also required that the staff conduct a public workshop because it has more than 10 units and requires a hearing level grading permit. This public workshop was held on September 15th, 2022. All property owners within a 500-foot radius of the project were mailed a notification, and there was approximately 10 participants that attended that workshop. So I'm going to advance a little. So the location of the parcel, the project site is located at the corner of 2nd Avenue and Edison Way, shown here in the bottom right box in yellow. The subject parcel is currently undeveloped, but is being utilized for parking and storage. And then the immediate area surrounding the parcel consists of a mix of industrial and commercial uses and buildings on the project side of Edison Way, and single family residences located across the street on the west. So you can see that pattern of development also in this photo. The property is zoned commercial mixed use with a general plan land use designation of medium high density and commercial mixed use. This is just a schematic of how the proposed building is to be laid out on that parcel, and also includes some of the proposed planting plan. So the yellow here showing kind of the footprint of the building. And then I have a couple of different views of the building to show you, just to help orient. So in this photo, we would be looking at the building from the corner of 2nd Avenue and Edison. Here's a more zoomed in view of that same section, kind of looking towards the train tracks. And then we have another view here of the building looking from the corner of 2nd Avenue, kind of straight on. And then this is going to be the side of the building with the train tracks running on your right-hand side. And then the rear of the building and side that fronts Edison. So your sort of right side of the building would be along Edison Way, and then the portion with the fence would be the rear property line. And then finally, we have the right side and rear of the building if we're looking at it from the train tracks. So in terms of conformance with the North Fair Oaks Community Plan, I did want to point out that there was a small error in the intro paragraph, which referenced a policy that calls for the county to create distinct gateways at key location within the North Fair Oaks area. This is not one of those identified, this location is not one of those identified gateways, and that was included in error. However, the policies that were discussed within the body of this section remain applicable and compliant. So the first of those is found in Chapter 2 under the land use designations, and that's policy 2C, which calls for residential infill development on vacant and underutilized residential parcels, and with areas identified as appropriate for additional mixed use, residential, commercial, and other development. It also encourages multifamily residential and mixed-use residential development in these areas. While we don't need to revise the subdivision regulations for this, the CMU3 does allow for multifamily residential uses as an outright use. And then Chapter 6, which is the housing chapter, has policy 5A, which encourages and or requires that larger housing units and multifamily, that there be large housing units and multifamily residential development. And this particular project includes a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom apartments. In terms of with the project's conformance with the zoning regulations, it does comply with the development standards for CMU3. This table is actually cut from your staff report, so it's included on page 4. And the project was found to be compliant with the allowable site coverage, floor area, setbacks, and parking requirements. The proposed building does exceed the allowable height by approximately 8 feet and number of units by 10 units. However, these are allowed via the county's inclusionary and density bonus ordinances, along with the state density bonus ordinance. And then here just providing the parking layout. So it's provided again on the basement floor and then partially on floors 1 and 2. And then the parking is color coded for you here. So there's residential bike parking, public bike parking, there are guest spaces, EV station parking, ADA spaces, all shown their layouts here. In terms of the grading regulations, we are required to make the following findings. The first being that the granting of the permit will not have a significant adverse effect on the environment. And staff found that the project would have less than a significant impact on the environment with the implementation of standard conditions of approval, which require things like excavated earth be off-hauled and deposited to approved disposal locations, requiring application of erosion control measures prior to and during project grading and construction. We place limitations on grading during the wet season, and we require that the project engineer submit written verification that all grading has been completed in conformance with the approved plans, conditions of approval, and the county's grading regulations. The second finding that the project conforms to the criteria of the county's grading ordinance. As mentioned, the project, as it will be conditioned, will conform to the criteria for review contained in the grading regulations, including erosion and sediment control plans, dust control measures, and the required replacement of removed vegetation. And then finally, that the project is consistent with the general plan. As outlined earlier, the project conforms to the North Fair Oaks Community Plan, and that is the North Fair Oaks applicable section of the county's general plan. And then in terms of environmental review, similar to the project before this one, the county's planning and department and the Department of Public Works are performing a review of a CEQA analysis of this project that tiers off the North Fair Oaks Community Plan and its associated environmental impact report. This includes a staff review of a transportation analysis. We've had several versions that we reviewed by Hexagon Transportation Consultants that have been submitted by the applicant. At this time, the applicant is in the process of working with their transportation consultant and DPW to address comments. So based on that, what planning staff is asking of the council today is that you provide us a recommendation to the Planning Commission on the proposed grading permit for this apartment building. that concludes my presentation, but I'm available if you have any questions.
Thank you, Angela. Do we have any questions from council members? Any questions from council members?
My concern is when there was a community meeting, 10 participants, I know many more than 10 participants would love to continue this dialogue, the conversation about this proposed building. So I'm not accepting that when this 9:15 meeting took place, only 10 participants were interested. It doesn't sit well with me. I think another attempt has to be made. I think genuine dialogue needs to happen. There's residents that are living there for more than 20, 30 plus years. I think they need to be they need to engage in a conversation. This is totally going to impact them. And much of what I've heard is that they don't understand why 7 stories. 7 stories are for buildings that are downtown Redwood City. They are along El Camino. This is smack dab in a residential area. Even though it's mixed use, it is residential, and many of the neighbors around this building have been there 30 plus years. They deserve another opportunity for authentic dialogue with this project, with the project people. What attempt is done.
Okay, very good. Do we have other questions from council members?
And I just support what Beatrice says. I mean,
If I may, it's important that we follow the order of the agenda. This is not the time for deliberation by the council. It's time for the council to ask questions of the planner. Then we hear from the public, and then it goes back to the council for deliberation. But it's important that we not make positions stated at this time because the public has not been heard on the item.
Thank you very much.
Sorry,
Jim.
okay.
To the chair.
Please, go ahead.
To the chair, or whatever I'm supposed to say. I noticed 2 or 3 people emailed in letters of comment. And I looked at those while I was at work, and I actually drove by and parked next to the thing because I've never been to this location, and I walked around, and it's light industrial, a block and a half from Middlefield, and there's residential houses right across the street, and the guy that it was clearly like a whole bunch of mixed uses going on with or without benefit of a permit. I guess this is supposed to be a question, but my question is, can we record the emailed remarks from the people into our record that we did receive them and read them? I want to let the people know that they were included,
Those will be
even if we're not like reading aloud.
as part of the public comment.
Yeah.
Any other questions from council members? I had a question to kind of piggyback on what Beatrice brought up. I don't know how you get 7 stories into 78 feet, especially when the additional 8 feet isn't actually part of the structure. I don't know how that happens because I think of a story as being at least 12 feet. So how do we get 7 stories in a 70-foot?
I mean, I'm happy to share the plans again, but I believe the architect group is here. Maybe they could speak to ceiling heights. Alex or Nathan, I think they have their hands raised.
Yeah, hi, this is Nathan Simpson. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, I am the Associate Design Director at BD Architecture. Alex is the design architect and principal at our firm. He is unfortunately sick right now, so he's just listening. The height that you're hearing is the typical floor is a 10-foot 2 inches. That allows for a 9-foot clear, which is a typical residential clear height for apartments and condos.
Okay. While I realize this is an application for a grading permit, do we have a sense of what percentage of the units are going to be set aside for very low income residents? Is that
34.
Has that determination been made? Okay. Oh, thank you. I missed that on the 34 below market, 135 market. Okay. Thank you, Gordon. Maybe I missed the parking too. Was there an indication of the number of parking spaces
There was,
in the project?
there was more than one parking space per dwelling unit, which I thought was nice because the state law has changed. And you can claim that because it's near a transit stop, you can offer less parking. And I was pleased to see that they had sufficient parking, like a space and a half per unit. Because it is what it is. When you're like working poor or whatever, you don't sometimes have a choice to. As I understand this is a recommendation to the planning commission, and the planning commission is going to actually have a hearing in which they'll consider our recommendation, the applicant's stuff, and residents will have an opportunity to attend that. They'll have an opportunity to attend tonight, which they may or may not have heard about. And then after that, it could even go to the Board of Supervisors for appeal. So, I mean, it's not like government is super speedy. But we do have like a need for housing and for jobs and for this and that. I'm impressed that they want to do 7 stories, because I was thinking 4 to 6 along Middlefield and El Camino. They're risking their money. It's a parking lot and gravel, and I don't know. I'm not supposed to say how I'm gonna vote.
Yeah, let's wrap up with questions and get some public comment in and go from there.
Actually, I do have a question. So
Please.
all we're recommending is grid
The grading.
of land, right? That, at this point, that's it, right? Okay.
And grading means that you change the level of it for the parking that's gonna be underground, moving truckloads of dirt out and stuff like that.
Yes.
Last question from me. Does this project impact our 2015 to 2023 RENA allocation, or would it apply to 2023 to 2031?
That is an excellent question. And Will, maybe you can help.
Or will?
So the site itself, because it is not developed yet, we are counting this project in the RENA allocation for the upcoming housing element that we're adopting now. So the way that the state looks at sites that are in progress but will not be developed before we adopt our housing element is that they will count toward the next housing element cycle. So we are counting this in the upcoming RENA for 2023 to 2031.
That's okay. That's good news. Are there any other questions from council members? Is there any public comment on this agenda item?
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 7, grading permit for an apartment building located at 2949 Edson Way, please bring the speaker slip up to the clerk or use the raise hand feature on Zoom. And I do see a few hands raised on Zoom. We will allow Kenny Z to speak first and then followed by Robert. Kenny, you may begin when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, council, again, for hearing me. Yeah, I unfortunately was not one of the 10 that attended the last meeting. I felt like it came up pretty quickly. But I do agree with Beatrice. I think that maybe a little bit more community outreach to get some more opinions. You know, I live a block away for where this project is projected. And the funny thing is, there's no building within a mile radius that's larger than, say, 2 stories, whether it be commercial or residential, and to put a towering building over homes across the street that are single story, it's a little I don't want to use the word puzzling, but just it's unsure. It's I'm not sure how it's going to look or how somebody would feel, but also the impact, right? If you look now, there's commercial trucks, vehicles just stacked all up and down that corridor. Once that's built, I assume they're not going to want them in front. So where are they going to go? They're going to spill over into the neighborhood. We have issues, as most probably voice and know, with parking as it is. So there's a little bit of a concern there, right? So I think, the community maybe, just unaware or, maybe hasn't given ample much opportunity to really dig into it and get some more information. Is why there isn't so much pushback. But I think, yeah, an opportunity for more voices to speak and to really understand what's going in, I think it's extremely important. And the impact, right? Again, we spoke about the traffic up and down 2nd Avenue as it is. It's not going to get any better, right? When you're adding 100 and something units that are going to be traveling to and from home, wherever. So yeah, that's just opinion. And yeah, thank you for the time.
Robert, we'll grant you the access to speak and you may begin when you're ready.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
I have a workshop over on Crocker Street, which is a block and a half away. And I'm just wondering if any consideration has been made for the dump trucks that are going to haul out this 22,000 cubic yards of dirt. Do we know what route they're going to take? Because they can't go down Middlefield because Middlefield's under construction and is a mess. And I don't know what they're going to do. I guess they're going to run up 2nd Avenue. But I think there needs to be some consideration for the 2,200 or so dump trucks that are going to have to run up and down the street to get that dirt out of there. I'm for the project, but I just want to make sure that it is dealt with. They're going to need to clean the streets on a regular basis. Traffic there is a mess anyway. So I just thought I'd bring that up.
Thank you. Greg, you may begin speaking when you are ready.
Hello, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to clarify first that while this is a grading permit that's being before the council, it's my understanding that the approval is essentially, or in most practical terms, an approval of the project. I also wanted to just agree with having more listening sessions in the neighborhood. In general, I'm not in support of the project as it is because it's just much too large for the community, for the neighborhood. My family has lived in the immediate neighborhood for well over 50 years. We own 6 households within the 2 blocks of the neighborhood. There are many homes in the community, in the neighborhood, I'll say neighborhood because I mean neighborhood, that have 2 and 3 families, not parcels, but in each unit. The area, the neighborhood is already overly impacted. There are businesses run out of the community that have lots of business vehicles, which is already mentioned. You'll see one right across the street from the project. There are way too many cars already in the neighborhood. You will see that cars park on the corners at a diagonal. So it creates lots of safety hazards for the people who are walking, for the children who walk in the area all the time, and for people who are trying to drive. It's really impossible to park in front of any of our homes. And that's the greatest concern for our dad who has to use a walker to get around. The other comment is regarding the height. It's just way out of character for the neighborhood. This type of a project is better suited, as was mentioned before, downtown Redwood City or El Camino. So again, while in favor of housing, the project as it is proposed now is just much too large. Thank you.
Lorena will grant you the access to speak and you may begin when you're ready.
Yes, thank you for listening. I have lived in this neighborhood for many years. I have a couple of points. One, I was part of the original community membership group that talked about the early designs of the project. I don't recall that there was a 7-story option. It was my recommendations and my thoughts back then were it was limited to 3 or 4 stories. So similar to other comments, something happening 7 stories in this neighborhood residential. I don't see that alignment. I also want to mention that although I heard a comment about emails being recorded, I don't know about phone calls. I left a phone call message and I'm not sure the exact name in my opposition to the project. I don't know how we can capture those and if those are noted in the record as well. I agree with nearly all the comments in terms of not approving the project. I don't think we have enough community involvement. I know when I was part of the community, early community planning, there was a lot of other opportunities for community input. COVID might have changed things, but I don't think that the community is aware of the impact that this will have. Completely agree with all the issues on parking, the size of it being overlooking on homes. I don't want someone, I live a football field away. I do not want someone 7 stories looking down on my backyard, looking to see what I'm gonna do. It's out of character. I understood that there was going to be buildings. It was going to be on Middlefield. I did not expect it to be on 2nd Avenue in the early neighborhood. So I personally am completely opposed to it. Again, I've lived here my whole life, and I think there definitely needs to be more community input into it. Thank you.
Hugo, we will grant you the access to speak and you may begin when you're ready.
Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yes, my name is Hugo. Thank you for giving me time. I'm actually like 100% against it. Right now, before they even built the place, parking is notorious here. There's not enough parking. People park from outside the area. Body shops, auto parts shops are parked vehicles here in the streets. I figure at 169 apartments and 218 parking spaces, you have approximately 1.3 parking spaces per apartment, which is like for a car and a bicycle. Most units are going to have 2 more cars. And with the vehicles being evicted from the lot where you're going to build it, they're going to be parking in the street. Another thing, 2nd and Edison right now is like a freeway. I hate to imagine with 169 apartments with cars, it's going to be like. Public transportation, only people that can't afford a car use it. As for notifying residents, I only feel like a very small percentage of residents were notified. You go to the apartments on the west side of Middlefield and you can tell there's not enough parking for them, and that's lower rents than what this new place is going to have. So we know we're going to have a lot more cars. They're going to need parking spaces on the street. Trash, like I said, we have problems already here before the building is put. We had a refrigerator on Edison for like 2 months. Hate to think what another 100+ cars are going to do and people in the neighborhood. And that place is going to be huge, man. This is all residential. But anyway, thank you for your time, and I hope you notify more residents.
Last call for public comment on Zoom. We do have a public comment from Erendina in conference room 101. You may walk up to the podium and you have 2 minutes.
Hello. So I have some concerns, mainly questions regarding this bill. It's really more of how are they going to address the Second Avenue traffic? So this is really more piggybacking into what is the item of tonight's agenda. And as well as, are there opportunities for some ownership as well as, are there opportunities for ownership as well as rentals for the possible tenants of this building? As well as I wanted to give a perspective of like, as it is with it being supposed 7 feet, 7 stories, it's almost as if imagining the tallest building of the Stanford Redwood City campus, taking the Cardinal Hall building and putting it into that build in the middle of residence. It's too big. It sounds like the original, how Ms. Lorena had mentioned, that the original idea was 3 to 4 stories. It's now double its size. So I'm almost concerned as if the original developers have done due diligence of canvassing the neighborhood and to taking the residents' opinion and concerns and really putting it and projecting it into this project. Thank you.
There seems to be no more public comment. I will now turn it over to our interpreter to see if there are any public comments on the Spanish line.
Thanks, Deanna. There's none at the moment.
Through the chair, please.
Thank you very much.
Please note that we did receive written comment for this agenda item and they were posted to the website and shared with council members before this evening's meeting.
Okay. Discussion among council members. We've heard the presentation, we've heard public comment. I'd like to get thoughts on this.
I guess
Before asking for a motion, I'd like.
Yeah, more just, I guess this is for our attorney, since this is very specific, a grading permit, but yet it's for a 7-story, 165 unit. So it's a bit confusing exactly what is being proposed or what's being asked of us. One thing is the grading and the other thing is the building, whether it be 4 or 5, 6, 7 stories, whatever it is. So I guess if we approve the grading, are we then approving everything else that's being stated here, the 169 units, 7 stories, or is that left for later discussion,
The answer is a little complicated, but worth giving so that we understand the context in which we're operating. The way in which we regulate building in California is through zoning. When the Board of Supervisors adopts a zoning ordinance, it specifies what uses are allowed on various properties throughout the unincorporated area and what uses are disallowed. And you may have heard during the presentation the use of the phrase "of right." What that means is that if you own a property that is zoned in a particular way, there are a set of things you can do on that property without asking for further permission from the county to do so, other than a building permit. So we in the planning world, we talk about discretionary permits and ministerial permits. Ministerial permits are building permits. You walk up with your plans, you show it to a building technician who reviews the plans, determines that they comply with all the appropriate building codes, and you get a building permit over the counter after that has been reviewed. A discretionary permit is different. It goes to a public process where meetings are held and discussions are conducted over the compliance of the project and how conditions can be placed on the project to bring it into compliance if it doesn't comply. My interpretation of the staff report is that the grading permit is a discretionary permit that is being brought to you for your consideration and input to the Planning Commission, because the Planning Commission has to hold a hearing on whether or not the grading permit should be issued and how it should be conditioned. But once the grading has been conducted, the owner of the property is entitled to build on the site in any way allowed by the zoning. So the scale of the subsequent development is dictated by rules that have already been considered, adopted, and enforced by the Board of Supervisors about how large a building can exist on the site. And so, for example, the reference to height limitations is because the proposal isn't relying upon the height limitations that would ordinarily apply. It's relying upon a density bonus that kicks in when you include affordable housing in your proposal. So if the developer is proposing a project that, according to the planning department, complies fully with the of right uses, combined with all the other regulations that the Board of Supervisors has imposed and adopted by ordinance, if the planning department reviews those plans and says these plans comply fully with what you're entitled to do in this zone, then there is no subsequent discretionary permit to be issued. I can ask, Angela's still on the line, she would know better whether or not there might be other discretionary permits in play, but my read of the staff report is that the grading permit is a discretionary permit. It requires that we bring it to you for a recommendation to the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission will be required to hold a hearing on the grading permit. But subsequently, the developer can propose a project that complies with the zoning and doesn't need further discretionary permission from the county. Angela, do I have it right?
Yes, sorry, I was having a little bit of technical difficulty, but yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you. So to answer the question the way you asked it though, you're not approving a building. Okay, you're not approving the building. If you recommend approval of the grading permit, then the Planning Commission takes that recommendation into its consideration when it holds its meeting and hears from the public on the questions raised by the grading permit. But subsequently, if the developer proposes plans that comply fully with the zoning regulations, you haven't approved the building. The Board of Supervisors has per se approved the building by zoning the property to allow that building to occur without further discretionary review.
Got it, thank you.
Further discussion, Blair, please go ahead.
Even though we haven't seen it yet, we have a whole bunch of high density zoning on Middlefield. And we already have it on El Camino. We're getting ready to push it half a block deeper so that developers can get a whole block parcel to get the density. I'm kind of a cynic. I don't think they're actually going to build, but that someone's obviously going to build and put their money on the line and take the gamble. Which means that everything between this building and Middlefield will be activated. You know, someone's going to go around and try to buy up all the parcels and put another thing next to it that's going to be 5-6 stories, and maybe the block to the north and south. But this is part of like a 10-12-year plan to have density along this corridor, and the benefit for our community was that we're going to get the set aside for some affordable units. And it's going to be, you know, in a manageable place versus just scattered willy-nilly. I don't know. I know it's a big project. I know it's scary, but I feel like encouraging anyone that's super excited to call Warren Slocum and to sign up to serve on the North Fair Oaks Community Council. We have 2 vacancies, one for a youth member and one for a resident. And you can get 4 years of this and be passionate on a monthly basis. That's all I got.
Are there other comments from council members? I have difficulty not supporting a project that conforms to the current zoning, which this does for the area, for which a use permit isn't required, and that conforms to the community plan. The concern that I have in this, and it was brought up by several of the people who made public comment, was the lack of awareness of the ability for members of the community to provide input for this. So I believe the project conforms with our current zoning. It does what I believe are good things with the neighborhood, but what I would really like to see is an outreach effort that maximizes the communication to the community and lets people know, about the planning commission hearing and what's going to go on there. And the reason that I emphasize this is, to Blair's point, we're going to see a lot of this. I mean, if you look at the way North Fair Oaks is zoned right now, the community plan, what's being considered, as Blair referred to, with regard to rezoning areas just off of El Camino and Middlefield for through the block development. So we need to think about this in the context of our community plan, but we also need to make sure that the community is engaged, that people really understand what this means for our areas. So again, if we can make very, very sure that the notice is posted for the planning commission meeting, that the residents of the area in some way are informed, if we have a mail-in list of people that are concerned about these things. I don't know, Emma, if OCA can get involved in this and help in some way, because I think this is going to be the first of many types of developments. I think those of you who have attended our meetings in the past will look at tonight's meeting and go, my goodness, we've got an apartment building going up, we've got a hotel going up. These are going to be, I believe, the rule and not the exception going forward in our meetings over the next few years as the area develops. So whatever we can do to make sure the public's aware of the planning commission meeting, I think we should do. Any other discussion thoughts from council members?
Could they take responsibility for cleaning up the grading like the resident talked about? There was a project on El Camino in Menlo Park for like the last year across from Safeway. And I got like 3 screws in my tires and I had to eat that cost. I mean, if they could be diligent, because that's a lot of trucks and that's a lot of debris. I don't know.
Well, we're going through that now. If you're on the El Camino corridor, that big development there with the dealerships, right?
That's the one.
Those lanes are full of mud.
And screws.
Well, I don't know what else, but I mean, they are full of mud. I mean, they got a sweeper out there, but I don't know.
I didn't entertain a motion to approve the grading permit for the 7-story, 169 unit apartment building at 2949 Edison. If there's no further discussion, someone like to make that motion?
We'll make the motion.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, well, we need a roll call vote then. Jana.
Councilmember Juan Carlos Bravo,
Aye.
Councilmember Beatriz Cerrillo,
Nay.
Councilmember Kathleen Daly,
Nay.
Vice Chair Blair Whitney,
Yeah.
Chair Brooke Sesser,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. Next agenda item, initiation of North Fair Oaks Community Plan 10-year review. The presentation's going to be given by Erin Octon, Sabrina Mora, and Will Gibson of Planning and Building.
Good evening, Chair Esser and committee members. I'm Steve Monowitz. I'm the director of the Planning and Building Department. And thank you for having us here tonight. I'm really excited to kick off this project. And the team is excited to kick off this project with the council. For those of you who don't know, we've been involved with this plan for many years. In fact, this is one of the first assignments I got when I came to the county many years ago. And, we put a lot of effort into creating goals and policies that we thought were responsive to the interests and priorities of the community at that time. So as you know, over 10 years has passed since that plan was adopted, and we have an opportunity now to work with this great team to evaluate the progress that we've achieved in carrying out that plan, and to work with the council and the community members to determine if determine what our implementation priorities should be moving forward. And also to help us set up systems for monitoring and facilitating progress moving forward. So I'm very excited to introduce the team from Good City who will be leading this project. I wanted to note that if there's any questions regarding the relationship of this project to the rezoning effort. Both Will and I are here to address any questions that may arise in that regard. But without further ado, I'm pleased to turn it over to the team from Good City.
Well, thank you and good evening, council members. My name is Aaron Ackman. I'm a principal with Good City. We're a local planning firm based here in the peninsula. Do most of our work here in San Mateo County. And if we could move to the next slide, please. I won't dwell on this because we'll cover all of these, but this is the agenda for tonight. We'll go through this rather quickly, so we'll have time to answer questions. Next slide, please. So the members of our project team, already introduced myself, Aaron Ackman. I'm a principal. I was worked in San Mateo County my entire life, grew up in San Mateo County as well. Most recently was community development director and assistant city manager with the city of Redwood City. So I'm pretty familiar with the overall area. Since moved on to this consultant firm about 4 years ago. Also have our economic development director, Leslie Parks here. She has a number of years of experience also within the entire Bay Area of the San Mateo County in particular. Sabina Mora is here. She is a senior planner with economic development. She's going to be one of the leads of this project. She was hoping to be here tonight. She's controlling. She was under the weather earlier this week, and we thought it was best that she's home, but she's one who put together these slides and is running them tonight. And Chris Nicholas is another member of our team who's getting married this week, or he would be here as well. But we're all excited to start. So next slide, please. All right, so in terms of the summary of the project, as Steve introduced this, there's really three main buckets. The first is to evaluate the progress of the community plan. The second is to recommend implementation measures. Anytime you have a broad plan like this, where there's hundreds of different policies, it's important as conditions on the ground change over the last 10 years, and as well as community desires change, and that you really filter and look at what you want to focus on for the coming years. And the third is to develop performance measures so that when you have this plan and it's really what you're planning to do, you have some way to gauge whether you're meeting the goals overall. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the 5 different tasks. The first is a technical assessment of the North Fair Oaks plan. That's really task number 1. We're meeting with city staff. We're meeting with nonprofit folks in the area, people who are actually part of the implementation to understand how the plan is going. Second task is evaluation and identification of current community priorities. As things change, priorities may change. You might want to stress different policies and programs that are within the plan. The third is develop proposed actions for the coming years and develop performance metrics. That's task 4. And finally, have an easily accessible dashboard so people can see as you're implementing policies, as you're taking actions as a council, as the Board of Supervisors is taking action for the North Fair Oaks area, people would see how those are connected to programs and policies within the plan. Next slide, please. So we're aiming to do this over the next year. Obviously, it is the kickoff meeting tonight. We've already met with city staff over the past couple months. We're going to have technical reviews over the next 3 months. One thing that we're going to stress throughout this entire period, and we've heard it here tonight, is community outreach, stakeholder input, making sure we're connecting with people and listening to people who live in the neighborhood, who work in the neighborhood, who own businesses in the neighborhood, because they're the ones who are going to be involved in implementation and also feeling the effects of implementation of this plan, both in a positive and potentially negative way if it's not done correctly. We'll develop an outreach plan and identify current priorities. In June through the summer of next year, that's when the draft report comes out, and the final adoption around this time a year from now. So next slide, please. So community plan assessment approach. As I mentioned, the first one is really a technical outreach where we're reviewing the plan itself, getting familiar with the plan as the consultant team, speaking to city staff, really doing a technical outreach. So talking to Will, talking to other members of the county team who have been involved with the implementation of this plan to understand what's been stressed over the past decade, what's worked well, what hasn't worked well, what's changed overall, discuss different potential tracking metrics for data. As well, this is also when we start to identify the stakeholders who we want to outreach to during the community outreach phase. So phase 2, that's the technical stakeholder survey. Also what I mentioned here, interviews with the technical stakeholders and start to analyze some of that survey data. Next slide, please. So the next phase is really when we start to outreach to the community. And this is where we form an advisory group where we see 5 to 10 organizations for this advisory group, including a member of the community council. We'll also be meeting with the community council on a periodic basis to check in and to discuss an overall outreach strategy. We want to make sure that we get this advisory group together first, so it's not just us as consultants or city staff that's developing this outreach strategy, but folks who live in the neighborhood and work in the neighborhood are also involved in that. And then during the outreach strategy, starting in spring of next year, develop a series of community meetings, events, pop-ups inside the neighborhoods, as well as community surveys, discuss with stakeholders to begin to promote opportunities for input. Throughout this phase, we're also going to be not only being out in the neighborhood, talking to people, but also developing explainer videos and different resources people could go to if they're not able to be at those pop-up events, not able to be at the community events. They could go online and have quick 1 to 3 minute explainer videos that show what we're doing now and what the goals of the overall plan are. Next slide, please. So I already touched on some of these, but we're going to have a survey, intercept survey. That means actually talking to people who are walking down the street or business owners to get their opinions. 25 to 30 community stakeholder interviews, so one-on-one or small group interviews. 5 community meetings that involve a mix of pop-ups, listening sessions, and interactive workshops. Meeting with the North Fair Oaks Council to get input on the outreach strategy, as well as the advisory group. And of course, we'll do this in multiple languages. Sabina, one of the key members on our team, is a native Spanish and English speaker, so she'll be involved in these meetings as well. And we also rely on county staff to some extent if additional translation is necessary. Community-wide survey provided in multiple language, and we will also have a dedicated website for this. So next slide, please. So that concludes it. All of our contact information is here. This is just the beginning of a year-long process. We're very excited to be able to be involved with this, and we're happy to take any questions at this time.
Do we have any questions from council members for the team? Let's see. Please go ahead.
Were you surprised at some of the pushback from the project tonight from the questions, or are you expecting that to come in?
I mean, having done planning for the past 20 years, I'm not too surprised. I think those are legitimate concerns that community members have.
Okay.
I think overall, the difficulty we have within local communities is the state creates a lot of the framework for development now, which limits local discretion.
Sure.
So I think a lot about that is being honest during the community outreach process about how can we develop front-end discretion that the state still allows, because we don't have that back-end discretion anymore. But I think being honest throughout that about, hey, 10 years ago, us as local jurisdictions had a lot more discretion when it comes to the development process that we don't have now, so that the long-range planning documents are our discretion now, so it's important to be involved. So, I wasn't surprised because I've heard similar pushback, or not pushback, similar concerns before.
And if I just may add a little bit onto that, I think one of the great opportunities of this 10-year plan review is that the kinds of comments that some members of the community might want to share and their thoughts that might not necessarily be project specific, but might be more about other aspects of sort of the zoning or other things and other things including the community plan. The engagement with the community is really an opportunity for those larger kinds of comments and thoughts and input that's not necessarily project by project based. So it is an opportunity for different kinds of discussions to be had with neighborhoods.
Go ahead, Blair, please.
We could really use like an urban forest, because this is kind of a lighted, super overbuilt. Well, it's not. People are double and tripled up and we don't have a lot of green space. So in the midst of all these big ticket items, we forget about the quality of life issues, like a contiguous corridor of just pleasant walkable green belt that you could walk along, that you could bike through, you know. Everyone's arguing over train tracks. What about the trail and the trees? So I hope that you include holistic elements like that. It's not just all about pieces on a monopoly board and all that.
No, I think that's 100% correct, and a good general planning principle that you have to look at the public realm as well as just what are the private development regulations.
Could we go back to the timeline again?
Sure.
The slides are still available. I've got I guess my question has to do with the realism of the timeline. And I say that only because the original community plan is a thick, dense document. And I'm sure you've taken a look at it, and it's heavy reading, let's put it that way. And I question whether or not we talk about the technical review and in the community outreach, it seems like it's happening quickly. And I was wondering if there might be opportunities early on for input, perhaps from the council, the community, in terms of how to go about looking at the things that are real priorities for the community, given the breadth and the depth of the original plan. We have study sessions that are available, council study sessions that are available to the public. We have one in January and we have one in March. And we could set aside time in those sessions to do a roundtable between the consulting, say, planning and building and the council, and just kind of brainstorm, not ideas similar to Blair, in the sense that, you know, are you considering this? Are you considering that? Kind of focusing on areas that we really want to make sure we cover in the plan early on in the process, and also allowing the community time to kind of provide their input to the timeline and maybe some of the details in the plan like that. I remember when I first went through the plan, I was pretty amazed at the depth and the breadth and the thought that went into it. And I just think that the whole project might benefit from some early input, not only from the community, but also the council. So if you'd be available for one of those sessions, if you think that would make sense, given the timeline you've outlined, we'd be more than willing to dedicate that time to that.
No, I think early input on issues like that are important. That's something I would work with Steve as well as Will on about, you know, how we incorporate that. But I agree. I think hearing that early on both helps shape what we're going to focus on, but also helps the community understand that they're going to be involved in the process throughout.
And Will is as good a person as any to engage in that, because he's also working on our arena goals. He's also working on the rezoning that we've been discussing this evening. Many roads lead to him, and having that input early on, you know, getting the sense of where we're going in terms of zoning, in terms of where our housing goals are going to be achieved, will have a big impact on what the final plan looks like.
And in terms of the overall timeline, I mean, I do think it's reasonable timeline. It's also, you know, aspirational. And if it comes to where we say, hey, we need more community input here, or these community input is going too fast, it's not paced correctly, then that's something we'll sit down and, you know, have to push out the timeline, because I think it's something that you only do once a decade. You want to get it right.
Are there any other questions from council members? Blair, go
I
ahead.
just like throwing stuff out. Free Wi-Fi for everyone in the community as a public amenity, not even a utility. We did it for COVID as an emergency measure, had repeaters at certain spots. Make that permanent, just like corner to corner, because all walks of life, kids in school, that we could be ahead of Menlo Park and all these other so-called high-tech cities right here in North Fair Oaks.
Are there any other questions from council members on the project? Do we have any public comment?
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 8, initiation of the North Fair Oaks Community Plan, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or use the raise hand feature on Zoom. I do see a couple hands raised on Zoom. We will begin with Kent and then with Lorena. Kent, you may speak when you're ready.
I will try to be articulate here. My voice is not new to Steve, Will, Justin, and the council. And it comes from my involvement as both an arts advocate and being involved with zoning issue and the North Fair Oaks Community Plan. Good City, you have a real challenge ahead of you in engaging the community. And I'm sharing with you and the county members here that in order to engage the community, I think you really need to overcome the perception that working with the county is a nightmare to avoid. From removing a tree to upgrading your power, I don't talk to any neighbor or any person that says, don't even think about getting a permit because it's way too complicated. So I've been in this community for 32 years, and I don't like what I hear from people because I believe in what the county does. I volunteer enormous amounts of time to make where I live a better place, and that involves being a collaborator with the county. So maybe some suggestions are, you may have to tell the community what the county has done of late to make their lives better, such as the bike lanes on Fifth Avenue, where we don't feel like it's a death trap just to go to a brewery, to Freewheel or somewhere. People need reminding of these things. And also the special thing is what it means to be in a resident of a 1.2 square mile area where you can have a voice if you want to. End of time.
Lorena will grant you the access to speak. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello again, my name is Lorena. I was part of the original community planning group. And I guess what I'd like to see, reference to the comment earlier, I do think the timeline is not allowing, I think, for enough time for community input and checking back in. We were allowed a lot more opportunity with the original community plan. I think the assessment needs that as well. I also think there needs to be better strategies to really engage with the community. I, for one, personally, having been in that community planning, I want to have a way to evaluate what I thought I was going to see to what is actually being implemented. I know we're getting input, but I think there needs to be an evaluation of what we thought we were going to get back 10 years ago to what is actually happening now, because what I was looking and envisioning is not what I'm seeing today. And so getting input from the community is great, but is this what we really wanted? I don't think so. I think some of what's happening is great. I'm not saying it's bad, but there are things that I am not in agreement, and that's not my vision when I sat in that group for 2 years. So there has to be more community involvement, better strategies. And I think there needs to be a way to really evaluate, is this what we wanted? Even if we thought we wanted conceptually, we had these ideas of what we thought it would be. The reality is once it comes into play, we need to come back and say, is this really what you guys envision? And if it's not, we need to course correct. We need an opportunity to make a change and do things differently. We can't say that what we thought we had envisioned conceptually, for us community members who don't think the way planners do not think the way others do. We live our life every day in this world. I've been here for 50 years. I need a better way to say what I thought I wanted. Is that really what it's turning out to be? And if we have to have a better way to talk to people in everyday language. Residents don't speak the language that you guys are talking about tonight. The way you guys spoke tonight is not a way that I think our community in this neighborhood is really going to understand, and that needs to change.
Last call for public comment on Zoom or in conference room 101. There seems to be no more public comment. I will now turn it over to our interpreter, Victor, to see if there are any public comments on the Spanish line.
Thanks, Deanna. There's none at the moment.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions, comments from council members at this time? Okay, well, thank you very much. We're looking forward to working with you on this, obviously. So, thank you. Next agenda item number 9, Sheriff's Office on Solving Crime and Cameras. The presentation is going to be given by Mark Myers of the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office. Mark, the floor is yours.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, everyone. I'll make this pretty quick for you. Everyone see that?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
All right, so I'm just going to review cameras, but mainly I'm going to focus on license plate reading cameras. I think that's going to be what would most benefit what everyone's thinking about for Middlefield Road. License plate readers were first used by the sheriff's office back in 2013. That's when we started out with the vehicle mounted or trailer mounted cameras. Those were made by Motorola back then. The city of San Carlos and Portola Valley soon after that had some fixed cameras. San Carlos went with 20 plus. Portola Valley had about 2 at that point, and that was mainly in response to dealing with a spike in residential burglaries and property crime that we're seeing during that time. The most current ones we're using now are the flock camera system. Those were first used by the sheriff's office in 2020. They're currently used by Millbrae, City of San Mateo, Atherton, and San Bruno just went online, and I believe there's 1 or 2 more coming online. Woodside just finished their LPR policy contract, and they'll be implementing, I believe it's 20 cameras, hopefully in the beginning of the new year sometime. The flock cameras have the benefit, they're quick, easy to move, and they have a 30-day retention. Flock also has a very good transparency portal and is very mindful of the privacy concerns that everyone has. Sheriff's Office LPR policy, usually ALPR data is retained for 1 year unless it's requested differently, and for Flock it is 30 days. Users must be trained and acknowledge the policy. Added plate data, if we put like a suspect's plate in the system, it only stays in the system for 30 days where it would alert us if he came into a jurisdiction that has the cameras. These are some of the steps we have to go through to search. A lot of people have concerns with how we access the data. First of all, our staff must be trained. There's multiple layers of logins that we have to go through where we're putting in personal identification, our badge number, and other personal items that are specific to a sheriff's office employee. We also have to put in a criminal case number or a crime report number to start a search. We have to list what we're searching for, an active investigation or some kind of crime, and then as well as the reason for the search. There's multiple layers of security that we have to go through before we can access any kind of data such as that. I'm just going to go over some quick success stories we had. And these 1 or 2 of these are from normal cameras, but most of the success stories we're having now are from LPRs. And it can be as simple as where a deputy was alerted to a stolen vehicle that came into the jurisdiction of, I believe it was San Carlos a while back. The deputies were able to locate the vehicle and arrest the driver. But originally the only want on that vehicle was for being in a stolen car, but it turned out the person that was driving that car was actually wanted for attempted murder in another nearby city. We recently had a robbery that occurred in North Fair Oaks about 2 weeks ago. That a shooting was involved. During that, patrol was able to obtain a license plate while they were still on scene and track that car as a Hayward camera picked it up when it went into their city limits. And then we're able to locate the suspect at a hospital because he had suffered a gunshot wound. Another thing in Ladera out by Portola Valley, we were able to identify a burglary suspect that was using a series of rental cars. So basically he was switching vehicles every 2 weeks or so. So it was making it difficult for us to track him. We're able to obtain a license plate and we're able to be alerted when that vehicle went into the Ladera area. And then most recently we had another carjacking in North Fair Oaks where the vehicle alerted to a camera in San Carlos, then later up in Millbrae, and we're able to track the subject and pursue them into San Francisco, where we were able to take both of them into custody. So there's been many success stories. I truly think going with some sort of license plate reader along the Middlefield corridor would probably best benefit the public. I know there's a lot of concern sometimes having regular cameras up there because there can be issues with facial recognition. What is the data being used for? So as far as if the council is considering doing some sort of cameras along the Middlefield corridor, I think truly like the license plate readers would be a better feature and be just be a better solution to both crime fighting, traffic control, investigating any kind of accidents or anything else that's occurring along that corridor. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Are there any questions from council members for Mark? Blair, please go ahead.
I got a pet peeve about people that don't have a front license plate. It's usually like white collar criminals, like lawyers and accountants and union bosses. And they still get waved through like DUI checkpoints because they're rich, important people. But if someone's driving around and they don't have a license plate on the front, can you still capture them with the camera?
Yes, sir. The most current technology, and I hate to say, we've been having just some great success stories with their product. Flock will actually learn to, you can actually search the type of vehicle. And if that vehicle has any significant body damage, stickers in the window or anything like that, it can actually search for that. So while you might not have a front plate, the mere fact that the vehicle went by a camera would activate the camera, so you would still capture that vehicle. If you had, let's say, a specific time frame you were looking for, you could actually go back and locate that vehicle, even if it didn't have a license plate.
Other questions from council members? Mark, can you tell me where these are deployed now in North Fair Oaks, the flock cameras? I heard a reference to Middlefield Road. Are they there right now, or is this something that you're?
Currently, we have, I believe, 2 on at 5th and Middlefield. And we're basically testing out to see how many cameras, if we went forward with LPRs or flock cameras on Middlefield, how many cameras we would actually need to capture all the data. Some roads you can get by with just having one facing, say, westbound and one facing eastbound. We're trying to see, would it take 4 cameras? Could we do it with 2? To kind of determine a cost saving measure. How many cameras would we really need if we wanted to go forward with the project on Middlefield?
When will that determination be made? When will we finally be considering actually installing the cameras?
That would be, it's probably going to be up to Sheriff Corpus to talk to the Board of Soups to go through you guys to get final approval. But let's say you did get a final approval, we go into contract with them. Once the contract is approved and all that, Flock or whoever we go with, usually it takes about 60 days to get a site survey done. Depending on what company we go with, some are solar powered, some companies use hardwired. So it's usually it's a 60 to 90 day timeline.
Thank you. Are there additional questions, Beatrice?
Is there maintenance? Do they go out or are they cleaned, or I'm not sure like exactly how they work?
They kind of, I really haven't had an issue with maintenance. If anything, maybe every once in a while, and I'm talking like maybe like once a year, there might need to be a slight realignment of the camera just because over time, maybe it just shifts, a couple millimeters or something, and it might not be picking up as many plate hits as possible. But I have not really heard of any of them breaking or anything like that. So the repair costs associated with any kind of LPR system is pretty minimal. And with the technology and all the new versions coming out, they're getting very reasonable pricing. I know for Woodside's RFP, they got approximately 25 cameras for around $50,000.
Question, Juan Carlos?
Yeah, at our last month's county public works, we got our little progress report on the Middlefield Road project, and I had asked about cameras on Middlefield Road. And is that something that you are proposing or incorporating in the the new Middlefield Road construction project?
As far as going with the LPR system for North Fair Oaks,
Correct.
I mean, I would highly encourage it. We were kind of trying to figure out like, as far as funding, if it'd be something the Board of Supervisors would be willing to fund, or if it's something the Sheriff's Office would fund. Once again, we'd have to wait for the new sheriff to come in, but I know she is very about providing the same, say, security measures that people in Woodside get, San Carlos get for the people of Fair Oaks. If you're driving into North Fair Oaks, pretty much from any of the surrounding cities, you're already getting, say, tagged by an LPR camera. I think Atherton has like 50 of them or something like that. So getting into North Fair Oaks or getting read by a license plate reader, in my opinion, it'd be very beneficial to helping protect the community if we could get at least a couple to maybe form a perimeter around it. So if people are coming in and actually committing crimes in the North Fair Oaks area, that we're able to capture that data and actually have something, a good lead to go with. Like I said, these last 3 weeks, we've had 2 really good success stories on truly like a violent crime. One was a robbery where the subjects were followed home and then robbed in their driveway. And we were able to track that back to another team of suspects that lived in the East Bay. And then the other one was a carjacking where they, yanked a woman out of her car at, 1 a.m. And then a pursuit was initiated, but we were able to get that plate actually off of one of the cameras at 5th and Middlefield. And then we're able to share that data with the other cameras in the county. And then when we found that they were moving up north, they kept hitting on the LPR cameras in Millbrae, San Mateo, and then San Bruno. And then we were able to actually locate the vehicle up in San Francisco, where we took them into custody. So.
That's great. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I know a lot of people have, and I've been a couple meetings with Woodside and everyone, I know everyone has like, safety and security concerns about, LPR data and all that. And all I tell people is we have so much other stuff to do. Like we pick a narrow time frame. We have a specific model, make, or an actual license plate that we're looking for. And that's all we do. It's like, there's not people just randomly searching license plate, reader hits or anything like that. But truly nowadays, there's so many success stories out of there, and so many other cities on the peninsula have it, that it's, and since the affordability has really come down, I truly think it is an important tool to give to the residents of North Fair Oaks. So that's just my opinion.
Thank you.
Sure.
Other questions from council members? Do we have any public comment on this item?
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 9, Sheriff's Office on Solving Crime, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or use the raise hand feature on Zoom. Do not see any hands raised on Zoom, but we did receive one in person from Eden and Dina. When you're ready, you may walk up to the podium and you'll have 2 minutes.
Hello, hi Captain Myers. I actually have a question for you.
Sure.
Just really curious about how you determine the location for the camera test pilot program for 5th and Middlefield. If there was another high traffic area, and if you guys actually decided to implement that test pilot program, knowing that the extension of the beautification of Middlefield was going to happen. So I'm kind of curious as to the data points that you would be receiving, if it is going to impact further once there is no high traffic construction once it's done. Thank you.
Sure. So what we kind of did with the initial picking 5th and Middlefield as the high volume of traffic that intersection has going through it, that's where we wanted to test to find out how many cameras we would need to cover other important intersections. What we usually do is we meet with the company, we'll look at a crime trend map to see maybe where there's specific hotspots, but usually we're trying to target the areas or put the cameras in the locations where you would come into and out of whatever jurisdiction. Some cities it's a little easier, like Woodside was pretty easy because there's only a couple ways in and out. North Fair Oaks, you're gonna have a little more challenging time putting the placement of the cameras. There's issues with putting LPRs on El Camino because it's technically a state route owned by the state. So we'd have to get additional permits for that. But the one nice thing about the cameras nowadays, especially the flock ones, is that it literally, if I need to move a camera or something like that, or let's say, we're having a specific speeding issue, or like someone's doing a, sideshows somewhere, I can literally call the company and have a camera move probably within a day or two. So to move cameras around nowadays is not that difficult. So if it's something that we would need to, during a time frame, we see that crimes may be occurring more on the east side or the west side or something like that. If we had to redistribute those cameras, it's actually very easy to do so. I hope that answers your question.
Any other public comment on this, Janet?
Last call for public comment. There seems to be no more public comment. I will now turn it over to our interpreter to see if there are any public comments on the Spanish line.
Thanks, Diana. There are none.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Captain, for the report out on that.
No problem. You guys have a good night.
Thank you, you too. Agenda item number 10, San Mateo County garbage rates. Presentation is going to be given by Lillian Clark of the Office of Sustainability. Thanks for hanging in there tonight, Lillian. We're running a little late.
Well, sorry to end the presentations with a really exciting topic. Thanks. So good evening, members of the council, staff, and the community, and I believe, thank you. My name is Lillian Clark, and I'm pleased to be here with you this evening to present the 2023 proposed garbage and recycling rates in North Fair Oaks. I also have a few colleagues on Zoom as well, and will be available for questions. Anthony Guerrero from our office and Tammy Delbeni and Evan Boyd from Recology are also here. Next slide, please.
One moment, there seems to be a tech bug.
Yep, perfect. So North Fair Oaks is part of the two areas the county manages for garbage collection services, and we are a member of the SBWMA. So in the red area, of course, is North Fair Oaks, and the other area we call county franchise area, and that represents the other service area that we manage. Next slide, please. The county's role in the SBWMA: we set rates annually. We ensure contractor Recology compliance with the franchise agreement for two service areas. We make program recommendations and conduct special events, such as a shredding event. This year, we get one event, and so we typically trade off between Tower Road or the North Fair Oaks Community Center. And this year, the shredding event was at Tower Road. We manage customer feedback regarding services. So we get calls on our hotline about service questions. And we are one member of an 11-member agency in the SBWMA. There were 12, but Atherton withdrew during the pandemic, and they are now with Green Waste. Next slide, please. I think you got to go back one. There you go. Thank you. As a member of the SBWMA, each rate year, the SBWMA conducts a rate setting process for the services you receive. And through this process, the contractor conducts an annual audit of revenue and costs for the service areas. And this is done by the folks, not only Recology, but it's also done by SBR that is currently running our Shoreway facility. And then the contractors apply indices such as consumer price index for labor, fuel, And just to let you guys know, the fuel index this year went up 40.6%, and labor costs increased 4.3%. And then the SBWMA takes these costs and they allocate them amongst the 11 member agencies based on your subscription level and the services that are provided, routes, labor hours, et cetera. The county conducts an independent analysis of this rate recommendation, and then we propose final rate recommendations to the board for adoption. Next slide, please. As you are aware, we have a minimum level service in North Fair Oaks due to the years of illegal dumping in the service area. And we're very similar to East Palo Alto. East Palo Alto has a minimum level of service as well. And we place those charges on the tax roll. Currently, the service is 232s or 164s. And Recology, SBWMA provided us the costs for these to service these containers. And as you can see, for a 32, it's $53.36. And for a 64 gallon, it's actually $59.86. And if it was a 20-gallon can, it would be $50.92. And the current rates that you're paying on your tax roll is $36.07. And you may have seen some newspaper articles in the last week talking about cost of service and subscription levels. And if we have larger cans, we should be paying lots more. As you can see, most of the costs for garbage collection services is because they have to send a driver out with a truck to pick up the cart. The disposal and processing costs, as you can see from the 32 to the 64, it's very, very little. It's not the percentage of the cost. And so we like to share what the cost should be, just so you kind of understand the difference. So if you had a 32-gallon can, disposal and processing is about $4 more. If you had a 64-gallon, it's about $9 or $10 more. And as I mentioned, this year, one of the drivers that increased rates, of course, is this fuel costs. And it's happening throughout the state of California. This 40.6% for increase in fuel has really impacted any service providers that are coming to your home and providing services. And again, garbage service is primarily based upon a driver and a truck visiting your home to service your carts, and there's 3 different trucks that do this, one for each of your types of service. So you have a garbage truck, you have a recycling truck, and you have a truck now that's picking up organics. And then, like I said earlier, was also increases in labor costs. And then the overall increase for the whole entire SBWMA service area was about 6.9%. So I wanted to give you some other information because I thought this would be important to kind of share with you how these costs come about. So in North Fair Oaks, the revenue we collected was about $3.3 million. The Recology compensation for their services is about 2.2, and disposal and processing costs about 1.3 million. So the revenue required to provide services in North Fair Oaks is about 3.5 million each calendar year. And this year we had a revenue shortfall of about 218. So a portion of this shortfall will be subsidized by a surplus, but the remainder will need to be made up from the rate increase. And keep in mind, we haven't increased rates since 2020, and using all of the surplus for ongoing service is not sustainable with CPI, fuel, and labor cost increases. And we also have new programs that we have to implement now for the state mandated SB 1383. And I'll talk about that in a minute. So we have to begin to get the rates to cover the cost of service to avoid large double-digit increases in the future. And the good news is we have increased rates in the past. So we did have a little bit of surplus to get us through COVID recovery. The bad news is we need to start increasing these rates now, and we'll need another rate increase next year to start covering these costs. Next slide, please. So in determining the 2023 rates, the overall goal is to align rates to the cost of service and try to stabilize the rate increases over the next 3 years rather than large increases. Therefore, for 2023 for North Fair Oaks, we propose the following: a 2% increase for residential dwelling cart rates and a 2% for 32-gallon commercial cart rates. There may be a few commercial businesses that are not on the tax roll, and they will see an increase as well. In addition, in order to encourage organic recycling for commercial businesses that don't receive the 3-cart services, a discount from the garbage rate was applied. We have reduced this discount to meet the cost increases of the new organic collection services programs. Next slide, please. So what we're proposing for the rates is the 64, which you can see we have 2,477 customers. That'll increase from $36.07 to $36.79. So it'll be a 72 cents increase per month. The other rates below it, again, will stay the same because the minimum level of service is 64, but we do allow residents to use other sizes. But as you saw from the earlier slide, the cost of service for a 20-gallon is $50.92, the actual cost. Next slide, please. What services does the area receive? So for residential weekly curbside collection of garbage, recycling, organics. So that garbage rate pays for all 3 services. For commercial businesses, they pay for their garbage and it includes recycling, but it doesn't include organics. There's disposal fees and handling costs, which you saw I kind of mentioned earlier what the processing costs were. And then you also get on-call bulky waste collection for residential customers 2 times per calendar year. And then there's collection of other things such as batteries or used motor oil filters. You get the once-a-year confidential document shredding event. And like I said, it alternates between the 2 service areas. And then at Shoreway, you can drop off recycling, latex paints, mattresses, cooking, motor oil, electronics, small appliances like the blender, the curling iron. You get the holiday tree service where they pick up the holiday trees. And during the holiday season, the collection schedule is there's no service on Wednesday, December 25th, and through January 1st. Service will be delayed by 1 day. And beginning December 26th, your holiday tree should be placed next to your green compost cart. Unless it's an 8-foot tree, then they'll need to be cut in half and put into your container. Next slide, please. Now I want to talk a little bit about another area that's kind of driving cost increases, and this is the new mandate, state mandated SB 1383 legislation. So this legislation is to reduce climate pollutants in California. Next slide, please. Organic waste is spoiled food, including meat, or food from prepping a meal, skin of an onion, or carrot shaving. Some of the stuff that you would normally put down your garbage disposal, but it also includes other things such as clean lumber, not painted or pressure treated wood, landscaping materials, leaves and grass clippings, soil paper products such as paper towels or pizza boxes or paper containers that you get for takeout. These materials should all be going into your green recycling cart now. Next program, slide, sorry, next slide, please. This slide provides a brief overview of the program requirements the state has required with the new legislation, and every single jurisdiction in the state of California is required to implement these programs. So the county will be required to provide organic waste collection services to all residents and businesses in densely populated areas. The resident is automatically provided the service rather than subscribing to it. The regulation standardizes colors across the state, and this is to be fully implemented by 2036. It requires a jurisdiction to place a label on each new container or lid that is provided to a customer beginning in January 1st, 2022. The county can issue waivers if a business is generating less than 10 gallons of organic waste, or if a business has physical space issues for locating bins. Currently, there is no waiver allowed for residential services. The county must conduct annual education and outreach to all generators of organic waste. This includes information on methods to prevent organic waste generation and recycling organic waste on site. It also includes information regarding the programs and the programs for donation of edible food for large businesses. So businesses like Safeway, Lucky's, the tier 1 generators are these large businesses that generate excess, or we call it edible food. So the bruised kind of banana or the apple now needs to be recovered and donated. And it's currently being reused in our county a lot in some of these areas. The county must also purchase a certain level of recovered organic waste products such as compost, renewable gas, or electricity from biomass conversion. The state has provided each jurisdiction a minimum procurement target based on its population. And there are also requirements for the county to purchase recycled content paper and paper products in our county facilities, and they set minimums. And each jurisdiction must also plan for adequate capacity for recycling organic waste and edible food recovery, which could mean siting new facilities for processing this material. And each county will lead this effort by coordinating with cities, special districts to provide solid waste collection services and regional agencies located within the county. The county is also required to conduct monitoring, compliance, and conduct enforcement. Monitoring begins in 2022. Enforcement begins in 2024. You may have seen some SBWMA staff in your neighborhood looking inside your carts. This will serve to meet the monitoring targets of the state and to design outreach pieces targeting certain materials they find that are currently not being recycled properly. The county must also conduct annual compliance reviews of commercial businesses to make sure that they have service. We have to verify receipts if they're self-hauling, and look at the facilities that they're bringing them to, because these facilities need to be certified facilities. And each jurisdiction is required to report to the state annually on all of these programs. So we have to tell them how many businesses are self-hauling. We have to tell them how many violations we've issued, how many carts we've surveyed or inspected. So what you should also know, the county, it was required to revise our ordinance code and include an enforceable mechanism consistent with the regulatory requirements of SB 1383. Next slide. So residents are required to participate in their jurisdiction's organic curbside collection services. And that means a lot of effort's going to be spent, and Recology might talk about that, on multifamily dwellings. We have to make sure that those multifamily dwellings get the different services they need and are separating it properly. Residents are required to properly sort their organic waste and their recyclables. And businesses are required to subscribe to and participate in their jurisdiction programs or self-haul properly. And certain businesses will be required to participate in an edible food recovery program. Next slide, please. So we have a few minutes for questions. For additional questions, you can call our hotline or email staff. And Anthony, I put your email address on there. Recology is also in the meeting, so if you have any questions for them as well. If not, you will be receiving a Prop 218 notice in the mail with the new proposed rates, and we will be working closely with SBWMA on more SB 1383 programs and outreach for North Fair Oaks. I want to wish you all a happy holiday season. Next slide, please. Now, if you have any questions, happy to answer.
Do we have any questions from council members for Lillian? Any questions? I had a quick one, Lillian. How do the rates that we're going to see next year compare with the rates being offered in other outside of our jurisdiction in other cities up and down the peninsula and in the county? Do you have a sense of that?
Well, I'll tell you this, their rates are going up in every jurisdiction.
Sure.
Because of fuel costs and these SB 1383 programs. Some are more significant than other because the residential rates have, the smaller carts have been subsidized by other rates. So there's some significant increases. I have not seen a jurisdiction where the rates have not increased. So, and I'd be happy. We haven't actually conducted a survey. We'll be preparing one for the board meeting, but once we get that table put together, I'd be happy to share that with you, Brooke, so you can kind of get a comparative. But I think what folks get confused with is, these collection companies, the processor, the SBWMA, provide us their costs. And we have to set our rates to meet those revenue requirements. It's a pass-through cost, and you do it however you can get there. But you also have to follow Prop 218, which means that you have to get rates closer to cost of service. So nobody's, that's kind of the future of where we're going with rates. So, we're slowly incrementally increasing the North Fair Oaks rates. And then of course, COVID hit, right? And so last year we actually did a transfer out of our own funds to kind of cover a portion of the cost to kind of alleviate another rate year of increases. But we can't continue to do that. At some point we have to increase the rates, start generating the revenue to meet the costs.
Okay, thank you. If there are no questions from council members, do we have any public comment on this item?
During this time, members of the public, if you wish to comment on agenda item number 10, San Mateo County garbage rates, please bring a speaker slip up to the clerk or raise your hand on Zoom. I do not see any public comment. We will turn it over into our interpreter, Victor, to see if there are any public comments on the Spanish line.
Thank you, Diana. There's none.
Thank you. Back to you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks so much, Lillian, for your presentation and for staying up late with us tonight.
Well, like I said, feel free to email us if you have more questions, and we'll be back, I'm sure, with more SB 1383 information.
Okay, thank you very much. Last item on our agenda tonight, some report outs. Start with the supervisor's report. I don't know if Maggie is on tonight for that, or.
I don't believe we have a representative from District 4 tonight.
Okay, nothing from the supervisor. County executive, Justin, do you have anything?
Yes, just a couple of quick things tonight. First, on behalf of the county and staff, I want to thank Commissioner Cirillo for her many years of dedicated service to the community by serving on the board. Some substantive items. The board has approved an additional round of ARPA funding for NFO small business grants. If you recall, we had a round of funding previously in which we granted $5,000 to 103 businesses in North Fair Oaks. With this second round, those businesses can qualify for an additional $5,000 grant, and our Office of Community Affairs will be following up with the businesses who received initial funding to see if they still qualify and are interested in the additional grant. We will also offer $10,000 grants to small businesses who did not get the opportunity or didn't participate in the first round of funding if they qualify. Depending on how many of the first round businesses participate, that'll affect how much is left for these additional businesses, but we're estimating over 20, about 23 new business grants will be available as well. And so our Office of Community Affairs and our business outreach team will be doing outreach on that. Also, if you may recall, we previously reported on the NFO Economic Advancement Center. This is the service where that will provide job seeker and small business assistance to NFO residents. We went out for RFP for a service provider for this center. We have 3 proposals, and so a review committee has been formed to review those proposals, and representatives of from the Office of Community Affairs, from the CEO's office, from Supervisor Slocum's office, Marcy Dragon, will be on that committee, as well as staff member from the very similar office that exists in South San Francisco for that community will also review. And from the North Fair's Community Council, Kathleen Daly has graciously agreed to be on that review committee. And we expect to finish the reviews and be able to award the contract by mid-December. Lastly, just an administrative matter. We are going through a bit of a change of responsibilities and assignments in the county executive's office. We are also getting a new deputy county executive. So this is likely going to be my last meeting with this council. You will have another deputy county executive with you in the new year. I've been working with you all for 3 years. I just did some quick math in my head. I think that's well over 100 hours spent together. And I just want to, I'm not going away. I still work very closely with a lot of the departments that appear before you regularly, like DPW, Office of Community Affairs, Planning and Building. But I did just want to express my appreciation for you all for the time and the energy that you put into this, grappling with difficult things, asking staff difficult questions. It's really appreciated, and your service to your community by spending the time here with us is I appreciate it, and I thank you for the time we've spent together. I'll be back. You'll see me around, but there will likely be someone else in this chair in the new year.
So is this a rotational thing between deputies or?
Yeah, likely being changed. Yeah, we do have a new deputy coming on board, and then we're also just changing some of the assignments and responsibilities.
And on the grants, that's another $500,000 total?
Additional 750,000.
Oh my goodness, that is true.
And this is the ARPA funding.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. And thank you for supporting us all these years. That's terrific, Justin. Thank you. Council member report outs. Vice Chair Whitney, anything tonight?
No.
Okay. Council member Prado, Juan Carlos, anything? Council member Surreal, Beatrice?
No.
Last opportunity. Okay. Count on that. Council member Daly.
Still learning.
Okay. I just have a couple of short things. We still have vacancies on the council, 1 individual member and 2 student members. So we have a voting and an alternate member available. I believe the application deadline is tomorrow, but I suspect that'll be extended given that I think we're still looking for nominations, certainly for the student members. I believe we have an applicant for one applicant for the regular members, but for any of the members of the public that are still online or watch this meeting, I think if you've listened to the meeting tonight, you've heard we've got a lot of things going on in this community next year. We're revising our community plan. We're rezoning significant portions of the community. Middlefield Road is going to be completed next year. And what else did I want to say? Anyway, there's going to be a lot of opportunity to be involved in decisions that are going to impact our community for a great deal of time. So if you've ever thought of applying for a position on the North Fair Oaks Community Council, I encourage you to do so now. With that, thanks so much to our presenters. Thanks to members of the public who attended and participated this evening. I believe we had press members covering our meeting. As always, thanks to the county staff, Emma, Kenny, Diana, Justin, Jennifer, Tim, for their support. Our next meeting is a study session on January 19th of 2023. This is our last meeting of the year, so happy holidays to everyone. And with that, we stand adjourned.
We get a break for December?
We get a break for December. How about that?
We get to drink big enough.
There you go.